What's up, everybody? Thralls Metal here once again. I'm the Croc Nick
Miller.
and we are back with a retro review, and one that I think was long overdue just because, well, this is like, I would say one of the most important bands in terms of a particular style of metal. We are going to go over SOD's 2 studio releases, definitely cover some other stuff in there, and pretty much go over a brief history of the band because, unfortunately, this band kind of only existed briefly, but had a tremendous fucking impact.
That is for sure. It started all the way back 85 with Scotty, and they had some downtime there, and he was, I guess, doodling around, drawing some shit, came up with Sergeant D, and it was kind of like started as like an inside joke with them about Sergeant D, and he needed an outlet for, like, he was into like hardcore stuff that was going around, wanted to push the envelope, I guess, with speed, and Charlie kind of thought the same.
It was kind of an interesting point in time. Like, we think, hardcore and metal, they kind of get along now. Like, they're generally okay. Back in the 80s, they were very separate crowds, and they didn't like each other. Like, some shaved head hardcore kid saw fucking long-haired thrash kids, like, you know what? I might just have to kick the shit out of him just because I don't like his hair. Like, that's how bad it was. Like, if a thrash kid went to a hardcore show, there might have been a good chance that he got the shit kicked out of him.
Yeah, it was kind of dumb.
Yeah,
Looking back on it, yeah.
A lot of tribalism back then. But Scott was very much into hardcore. He'd been writing hardcore riffs, and he wanted to find a way to bridge the gap between thrash metal and hardcore. And, well, he pretty much approached Charlie about it, and Charlie was like, yeah, I'm fucking down. We got some downtime. He also got a hold of Danny Lilker, formerly a bassist of Anthrax, and, still a good friend of the band. And they're like, well, you want to try this thing out? And he's like, yeah, that sounds like fun. And they needed a singer. So they approached their roadie at the time, Billy Milano, who was also the bassist of a hardcore band called the Psychos. Say, hey, you want to get in on this little Sergeant D thing we got cooking up? And I was like, yeah, it sounds like a lot of fun. It sounds pretty ridiculous. And having a guy that had a more hardcore approach versus like a more thrash metal approach in terms of vocals and attitude, I kind of legitimized it a bit. So the guys got together and recorded a 63-song demo called Crab Society North. This was affectionately known as something called Blipcore, where all these songs were just super short. Obviously, 63 songs. It's
like 10 minutes.
Absolutely insane. That's like Napalm Death's You Suffer 63 times. Yeah. But they pretty much just got to work on a full length. They approached John Zazula at Megaforce Records, who they had a great relationship with, and say, hey, we want to do this ridiculous thing. And John Zazula was like, yeah, no, do it. This ought to be fun. So they got to work, and pretty quickly, because this album came out the same year of their formation. On August 30th, 1985, Speak English or Die was released. And I would say it pretty much has changed the whole landscape in terms of thrash, because I would say this is the birth of crossover thrash.
Yep. Yeah, this album did a lot of things that weren't even things.
Yep.
At that point. Not until a couple years later.
Yeah, there are a lot of firsts on here, and just, again, the fact that they found, well, not the most peaceful meeting of 2 different styles of music, but they found some sort of sound within a couple of sounds, and, just merging it together, they found something that was just insanely aggressive. Like, all right, you have 2 different kinds of essentially what I would call fuck you dad music. Except thrash metal was, fuck you, dad, I'm gonna go out and get hammered drunk with my fucking other long-haired dipshit buddies. Whereas the hardcore fuck you, dad music was like, I'm gonna go out and maybe beat the shit out of these long-haired douchebags that are drinking beer over here. They took all of the biting riffs from thrash and added a hardcore attitude and this snide, dark sense of humor, and wrapped it up into a not even 30-minute fucking album that's 21 tracks long, and it's fucking brilliant.
Yep, it's absolutely killer. And like I said, started a lot of these things before they were things. Like, we're getting to like the blast beat. Charlie had the blast beat, and we were like trying to dig through like what other band would have been doing this about that time. And because let's be honest, in this period right here, there was a lot of stuff happening all at once. And it's hard to say who did this or who did that, but this album predates a lot of that stuff by years.
Yeah. I mean, that same year, Possessed Seven Churches came out, but I don't think there were blast beats like there were on, say, the song Milk on here, which, like, those are legit blast beats. And kind of the thing that, I think a lot of like more extreme metal bands start paying attention to is like, okay, that drum style sort of warrants even more aggression and more power behind it. Let's see if we can employ it a little bit more. But this band, like, sort of taking dark humor and kind of integrating that into their sound, and these very short but very riffy songs. And man, the songwriting here is top notch for what it is, because what it is very primal. Like, the riffs are not very technical at all, but it's how they're played. It's just vicious, and the guitar tone sounds great, and I love the production on it. The production on here is raw. They did it very quickly. Like, there was not a lot of time spent in the studio, but these songs were just crafted to pretty much get pits spinning.
I got hip to these guys when I read an interview with Rob from Machine Head, and he had talked specifically about the guitar tone in this album. And then reading more throughout the years, a lot of other people, a lot of older cats from that generation go back to this album in terms of guitar tone. So when I listened to it, it was purely because I was interested in the production side of it from the guitar standpoint. And man, like I said, it still holds up to this day, and the guitar tone is ridiculous.
My curiosity for this album pretty much came from looking at the album cover and then seeing, songs like Premenstrual Princess Blues or Kill Yourself on there. It was like, okay, I'm kind of curious what this is about. And right from the rip, the opening intro, March of the SOD, I would say is one of the greatest thrash metal riffs ever. It's simple, primal, it's a big fucking beefy stomp, and then you get right into Sergeant D, and Sergeant D fucking whoops ass.
Yeah, and the whole start of this album really sets the tone for the whole thing. It just right off the gate ripping, and it just doesn't lose you.
And it's the entire band too. Like, it isn't just one key factor in here, like the guitars or just the vocal presence of Billy Milano. Danny Lilker's bass is almost percussive.
Sick. Yeah.
Like, his tone is just gnarly, it's thick, and it's very prominent in the mix. Like, he adds additional heft to already hefty guitars. And Charlie's drumming is absolutely just primal. Like, he isn't looking for, like, like cool technique or anything like that, like he usually does in Anthrax albums. Like, no.
Fast.
Let's just go for it.
Fast. Go, 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 go. Everybody's amped up to 11 on this. They still, throughout all this craziness, they still kind of have a root in some of those things that were going on, like the big rock anthem type stuff in United Forces. It has a very big anthem-y type feel to it, but at the end it just breaks your fucking neck, It goes back into that blistering stuff. So they were able to blend a lot of different things, and not just the hardcore and the thrash. It wasn't just that crossover. And then in Chromatic Death, that is a death metal. That's a death metal song, a chromatic death metal song. Before death metal was fucking death metal. You know? But by years.
I mean, you could pretty much say like you packed every fast riff on Rain and Blood on a song that's maybe a minute?
Yeah.
Maybe a minute. It's just packed with intensity, but also, again, like fun, cynical humor. Like, the title track, Speak English or Die, is absolutely ridiculous. And the Milano Mosh, I don't know if I can do the Milano Mosh. I still don't know. I probably can. I'm fucking old now. But, like, the humor in here, and then this is something to probably note, too, is, this came out in 1985, and they were out to fucking, like, just, like, irk people. Certain groups of people, namely. And it may have come off, now as, like, I don't know if that's a little bit tasteless or dark. It's like, well, it is, and a lot of it was just inside jokes, and it was done as just dark humor. Kind of like Carnivore. Carnivore, Pete had a very dark, cynical sense of humor. SOD had that as well.
Now, I remember seeing something about Scott saying when he was talking about this album, like, a lot of people think we're racist. Those people are stupid.
Yeah, this was all like an inside joke. Mm-hmm. And I mean, he even said, like, yeah, we probably would have got a lot of shit. We probably would have been canceled right out of the gate if we had released this now. So it is kind of a product of its time. But within all this dark humor, you have just, silly, goofy shit like Freddy Krueger. Honestly, that song should have been on the Dream Warrior soundtrack. Fuck Dokken. Get that shit out of there. Like, all right, that song's okay.
This is way better.
This is way better. But of course, you have, like, great numbers like the Anti-Procrastination song, which is all of, like, 3 or 4 seconds. And What's That Noise? Which is just like a studio skit of just this noise keeps coming up and continuously pissing off Billy. And the rest of the band's like, I don't know what the fuck that is, man. Yeah. Are you doing it?
It's like kind of, it seemed like something that happened and they remixed it into their own little jam.
And it's cool to hear songs that, like, exude one side of the wall between hardcore and fucking thrash metal at this point. SOD would do their best to break down that wall. But you have songs that are a little bit more punky, like Pi Alpha Nu, but you have songs that are geared way more toward thrash metal, like, again, Freddy Krueger and Pussy Whipped, which, holy shit, the vocal cadences are nuts on that.
He is on point. He is ripping through that. It's pretty crazy to listen to.
Billy can fucking just go. And he comes off really fucking clear on here, too.
Mm-hmm. Right off the bat, when I heard this album, I was immediately drawn to it, gravitated toward it. The sounds of it, and just some of the things they were doing production-wise. The guitar tone was heavy, the bass tone was sick in there, and the musicianship, like you were getting at here, the drumming is on point, and we all know that he could drum.
Oh, dude.
But
Charlie's
this is 85, and he was like slamming through this shit, so I'm gonna give this a 4.5 out of 5. This is almost a perfect damn album in terms of what it's trying to do and what it's trying to accomplish, and what it did was set the groundwork for a lot of music that I love and get into it. It's unfortunate that I found this album so late in the game. Otherwise, it could have, who knows where I would have been listening to crazy shit.
Well, that's why you're on the channel, to listen to all the crazy shit that
I was about to say, I can't imagine that I'd listen to any more crazy shit than what we listen to now. But maybe it would have happened years before. This channel would have been going since the start of YouTube.
I second that. It is a 4.5. This is the crossover album. Like, this is kind of the thing that got crossover started, and bands with acronyms, because COC and DRI would follow not too long afterwards. It's pretty much lightning in a bottle. Like, they captured the essence of two scenes and combined it, and it worked. Like, in a way, this is like the original metalcore, except without the stigma of, all the stigmas that people have about metalcore. They packed both sides in there. The thrash riffs are all here, the hardcore energy. Everyone is just fucking on point. It's one of the ultimate fuck you albums. Like, it just doesn't care whether or not you like it, and it's kind of fun for that. The humor, again, maybe a little bit dated, but my humor is dark anyway, so I still find a lot of this pretty damn funny. But it's the songs. And they found this perfect balance between just being silly and kind of ridiculous and then going for the throat with serious fucking songs. This album is amazing. It's, pretty much, I would say, like a legacy one. Like, if you like crossover, there's a damn good chance you love this album. And if you don't, I don't know how that works. I think you should probably listen to this immediately.
Yeah, I don't know how that would work. If you've been to crossover thrash and you haven't listened to this.
So the band actually landed some tours, at least one major tour with Motorhead and Plasmatics, and, well, unfortunately broke up a year after the album came out. Like, I don't even know if it was a year after the album, but it was pretty damn close. They had planned a follow-up called USA for SOD, but ended up tabling it. And, there were definitely some reasons, namely because Charlie and Scott had Anthrax. And, that was a big fucking thing for them. That was their fucking meal ticket. And in this downtime, Billy Milano started MOD, Method of Destruction, and that band has its own fucking cool legacy as well. And Danny Lilker would end up joining Nuclear Assault, and then a little bit later on, he joined Brutal Truth. So, another couple of legendary bands under that dude's fucking resume, which, Danny's a fucking road dog. That dude plays in all sorts of killer shit. Now, they did reunite in 1992. They decided to do a one-off show called Live at Budokan, which was not at Budokan at all, but that is how they billed it, at least on the live CD that came out. And that live album is absolutely awesome. Actually, some of the songs on that album, I kind of prefer those versions over the ones on Speak English or Die.
And got a little more oomph.
There's a little bit more oomph. There's a little bit more aggression. I want to say fucking Billy ends up getting in a fight with someone in the fucking pit. And it's kind of funny because they bullet train the fucking set. Like, they go through Speak English or Die. And then we're like, well, we're out of songs that we wrote. So we're going to do some covers. So they actually even covered like fucking Ministry and fucking Fear and even Nirvana in there. So it's just a fun fucking live album, but once again, they would end up breaking up not long after that. But they would actually end up reuniting once again in 1997 with intentions to record new music. They were, dead set on releasing a new album, same lineup, and at least in 1999, before their full length would drop, they dropped a single that is absolutely fucking awesome called Seasoning the Obese. And I absolutely crack
Obvious,
up.
you know.
Oh yeah, I crack up every fucking time you hear Billy Milano scream, "Do you want to fry?" It's fucking amazing. But yeah, during this time they had actually signed with Nuclear Blast Records, so they had like a pretty good sizable label behind them. And on May 17th, 1999, they released Bigger Than the Devil. And well, this is a very different album than Speak English or Die. I mean, it's also another one that might be a little bit of a product of its time and kind of where all these guys were in terms of their, musical path. Because at this point, Anthrax had sort of embraced more of a groove metal sound. Mm-hmm. This was during the John Bush era, which, with some fans, it's not the best era. There's some good stuff during that time. I prefer the stuff with Joey a little bit more.
I think most people do.
Yeah, but this is, I don't know, kind of like an interesting album. Like, it is really good in some respects, and then maybe a little
it's just
too...
like head scratching.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell? Like, it's not even like, it's kind of funny, but it's...
Yeah.
It's kind of dumb. It's more dumb.
Yeah, like this one, I think it pushed for dumb too much in some aspects, and then I think the contrast between the dumb stuff and the more serious stuff is like, it's such a wide fucking canyon.
And going back to what you were saying with the sound a little bit, this was like more like, you get more like COC pissing razors kind of points to this, and the vocals were kind of almost too dialed into the riffs. If it was just, it felt like repetitive.
I do like Milano's delivery on here. Like, I think his vocal presence is even harsher than it was on Speak English or Die. But yeah, he's like just fucking on it. Like, it's a little bit robotic. Like, they're not as loose as they were on Speak English or Die.
I think that's what maybe it'd be. It's just, good, too robotic, too on the nose to what's going on.
But the production between the two is like night and day. Like, the guitars are a little bit muddier, a little bit more muffled, and I think they're down-tuned versus having that kind of more classic thrash sound. And one thing that I noticed that was kind of missing is Danny Lilker's bass.
Yeah.
Like, it's just kind of buried
there.
back there. Like, I mean, it's present in terms of like, oh yeah, I hear a bassy sound back there, but it doesn't have that thunderous fucking crunch that he has. Like, I don't know. It really kind of hurts the album a little bit because that anchor, that low end was just so fucking furious on that
especially
debut.
him. He's so on it, and his bass patterns fit really well with things, and it's just unfortunate that you can't really hear it in this album. You really have to dial it in, and you shouldn't have to do that.
And this album is like a full 10 minutes longer than the debut too, and it kind of feels that way. Like, granted, most of the songs are short. You do have some songs that are over the 2-minute mark, and you even have one over the 3-minute mark, which is absolutely unheard of for SOD up until like this point. Make Room, which is a fun song about just eating each other to make room for more people. Again, the dark humor in here is, quite prevalent, but again, like, it feels like more like bitter and snide versus like, we're just making like some dark jokes. Like, some of this was like, man, like, that's just, I don't know, you just sound like you're being fucking mean, which I don't know, like, that kind of works with, Billy Milano, but it's such a contrast from like the goofier stuff like Fugu, which is just there.
Yeah.
It's, Fugu. Or songs like Frankenstein and His Horse, which it's just, I don't know, it's just kind of dumb. And LATKCH, which stands for Limp Against the Corn Chamberhead, which is their dig against nu metal, which, I don't know, at that point, Anthrax probably shouldn't have made too many digs against nu metal because
they were,
Stomp 442 and Volume 8 were kind of close.
Yeah, and it was just, I don't know, kind of pointless, just these phrases or sayings that generation would use, and I don't know, it was just weird to throw it in there. It's like, what the hell? It's like they're kind of just throwing everything into it and just putting it all out and not really going through a process of like reflecting on what they've done. They're just like, put it all out.
Yeah, and like that was definitely an issue in here. Plus, like, there was this weird sort of vibe between like trying to stay current versus kind of going for the old sound, which, you're kind of stuck with doing a follow-up to such a legendary album. Like, do you try to repeat the formula exactly, or do you try to throw in some new stuff? Because either way, like, fans are fickle. Like, if you disappoint them one way by putting out the same album again, like, well, am I going to buy a third one now? Because is it going to sound like this? Or if you change your sound too drastically, it's like, well, I only like their old sound. So, yeah, it's kind of tough. But this one, it's just an uneven album. Like, there are some fucking bangers on here. Like, I love Make Room. Evil is In, especially with the intro, King at the King, doing the drive-through order. It's absolutely fucking amazing.
Kill the Assholes.
Kill the Assholes is great. Shenanigans is a fucking punk ripper. But there's some songs in here that just like, I feel like I've heard this already on this album. And
not as good.
Yeah. Like, immediately the opening track, Bigger Than the Devil, I mean, it's kind of a slow, groovy song that, you know, it doesn't open up with the same fury as like the first two tracks of Speak English or Die. Like, those are pace setters. Those get you ramped up.
Yeah, and this didn't have that initial pace setter. Like I said, it was more like, kind of felt like you're listening to Pissing Razor's album or something, a little more loose and not as in your face thrash crossover like this band should be. It was more playing into that power groove metal thing that was going on even way before this album came out. It was like before their first album, they were ahead of the game.
Yeah.
And then this one, they were behind the ball,
I mean, kind of playing catch up. They hadn't been together for a while. And again, like, at least, Anthrax had definitely changed their sound at this point. But for me, I think, like, one of the main things is, I think if this was stripped down a little bit, like, there are too many skit tracks on here. Like, there are, fun ones that I like Charlie Don't Cheat, and holy shit, like, listen to him do fucking blast beats as fucking Milano just rants.
Yeah,
in one breath, I think. Like, holy shit. But, like, I love at the end after, Charlie does all those blast beats, like, I'm never doing that again. I hope we never play that. And Celt Frosted Flakes, which I think was actually clever because it's like a parody about fucking Celtic Frost. Where did they go? And, like, every line is, like, a reference to a song or an album that they did and everything. And that's where, like, I think the clever humor kind of comes out. But then you got, like, other ridiculous fucking songs like Dog on the Tracks and shit like that. I was like, dude, why are these here? Like, I know, like, trying to pivot back and forth between, like, more serious songs, like, well, semi-serious in terms of...
Semi-serious, I was about to say, what like, serious song?
Crackhead Song and Free Dirty Needles. Yeah, they are serious in terms of, like, what they're talking about, but the delivery is anything but, and done in such a snide, dark way, like, wow, dude, do they hate homeless people?
I think they hate homeless people.
But that gap between it just feels like it's too much. Like, yeah, I mean, what are you? Like, the identity is kind of lost on here a little bit. But musically, there's a good chunk of this I do really like. It just feels like, there's a lot extra. And again, like, kind of that sequel thing, like trying to outdo the previous one, or trying to match it at least, or trying to go in a different direction. Like, again, there are so many different paths there. And I think the path they chose, I don't know, they kind of like spread themselves a little too thin and just kind of made this bloated album that has some legit bangers and then kind of a lot of filler. So overall, I'm going to give this one a 3. I still like it, and the tracks I still constantly play. Like, Evil Is In is still just a fucking fun song. It's one of my favorite ones on here. But there's a lot of stuff in here that is just kind of skippable. And I don't know, I feel like they weren't all together on this one. Like, there's just a lot of different ideas that seem to kind of collide on here. And while it's definitely fun, it has its fucking moments, it does feel bloated for what it is. And at like 23 tracks, and almost 40 minutes versus the first one being a very fucking tight, like 28 minutes in some seconds. Like, this does feel bloated, and it doesn't pack the giant bite the first one. Like, there's really no different quality on Speak English or Die, in my opinion. It is a fucking roller coaster of a fucking ride. It fucking flies by, and it's great. This one, there are just moments here like, well, we can skip this. This is fine. But it's still a decent album. I still recommend checking it out. I mean, if you're gonna go listen to SOD, I would say it's probably gonna be the first one, but this was still fun.
I'm going to have to go 2.5 out of 5. This one really fell off the map for me. Maybe I would have liked it a little better if I would listen to it when it came out back then. Maybe. But it wasn't until just recently, that I was listening to this stuff when we initially started talking about doing this. And I don't know why that album, the second album, kind of fell off my map or whatever. For whatever reason, I didn't listen to it. And it didn't hold up well at all, which is why it dropped off a little bit for me in terms of rating. I just think it was really, they just threw everything that they had and didn't process what they had and really pick through it and try and make sense, a little bit more sense of it, thrown together. And it just didn't have the intensity, the feel of the first one. And maybe because the first one had such a big impact on things, it's hard to when you set a bar like that, it's hard to get there for some bands. And this one, with the time, like you said, in between this stuff and what was going on, and it just didn't work out in their favor for this one for me.
They even had more time to write this one too. Like, they had reunited in '97. This didn't come out till '99, so they had time to, like, sit back, fine tune, maybe yeet a track or two. I don't know. Like, there may have been, again,
It doesn't seem like they did, though.
There may have been another 63 song demo in there that we didn't know about. But yeah, it's just kind of odd that they had more time to do this in terms of fine tuning this versus the short amount of time they had to do Speak English or Die, and they just kind of riffed that one out and it's like, yeah.
Well, like you were saying, though, that's just lightning in a bottle.
Yeah.
They captured it back then in '85, and it was hard to recreate. Well, I guess fortunately we have the first album.
Yes.
Unfortunately, we're not going to get any more.
Yeah, because, well, once again, things went south. Now, they did do some tours. They actually released the footage on a home video with their Kill Yourself, the movie, in 2000. I don't have any of the DVDs, and I kind of really need to get them. I'm sure you can find the footage on YouTube at this point. But they also did re-release their Live in Budokan CD and actually retitled it Speak English or Live as a home video thing too. And, well, they kind of ended up breaking up around 2002 or 2003. It's in that area, namely due to disputes between Billy Milano and Scott Ian. This split, I guess, was pretty heated. And I'm not going to speak for Billy Milano's stance on this because he can definitely speak for himself. In fact, my good buddy The Crypt over at Metalomania did an interview with him years ago, actually. And I'm just going to leave the link to it down below and go ahead and watch that. he's still got an axe to grind, and I don't know, like, the rest of the band seems like they're fine. Like, Danny went off, did his own thing, and I think he's essentially kind of retired from music. I know that Brutal Truth reunited a couple of times, and so did Nuclear Assault, which Nuclear Assault just broke up again, I think, last year. But as far as SOD, I think the last thing we got was Rise the Infidels, which were 2 new songs and 2 cover songs and a bunch of live material once again. And that was it. Like, I think the pretty much the door on this is I think it's slammed a little bit harder than that.
Yeah.
I guess there's just still too much bad blood. I mean, it doesn't seem as though that Scott and Charlie seem like they have a lot of like bad blood towards Billy. I don't know.
I have no idea.
But I mean, they're definitely busy with Anthrax. I mean, Anthrax will have an album out this year. But it sucks because I feel like if they were given like another chance to do a third album and they were all on the same page, who knows? Like, it could have been absolutely fucking amazing. Mm-hmm. And that is it. That is the brief but pretty fucking cool story of SOD, at least as far as we know it.
Mm-hmm. And if you want to stick around for the very brief and not cool story of Thralls, hit the thumbs up, all the whatever the gadgets that you can get snappy with down here. Get all of them. Get snappy with all of it.
We're also on Patreon too. If you'd like to help us out there, there's a link down below to thrallsmetal.com. That is our shop. We will be getting new merch in there eventually. New year, new merch. I think that's like the idea. Mm-hmm. We've been kind of lacking on that one. But there's also a link to our Patreon there. If you'd like to help us out there, click that link. And as far as announcements, again, we are in the process of looking for a new venue for Denver Death Fest. And when we get that, we will announce the lineup, which I don't even know the lineup, so it'll be a surprise for me.
Yeah, we actually just, our cohorts over yonder, we're meeting today, actually, with someone. So, yeah, it's coming together. And as always, thank you all for tuning in, subscribing, doing all that stuff, and commenting. Again, we can't thank you enough for that. It truly means the world to us.
Fuck yeah, it does. Like, this channel would not have grown to the the heights that I didn't see it growing to. Like, I'll be completely honest. But you guys are, like, pretty much the lifeblood behind this. And thank you guys. We have tons of content we have planned for this year. We're going to stay busy, of course, because we're fucking obsessed with this shit. And it's a lot of fucking fun. So, thank you all once again. And we will catch you later.